at all. So I'm a little stressed. And I've a lot of the stuff that I do in my lifetime, have done, will do.
Some theatergoers have taken to X to complain that they paid premium ticket prices, only to discover the show's biggest number doesn't actually happen inside the theater. Instead, the star-studded moment takes place outside the London Palladium, with Rachel Zegler performing live on the street, while her vocals are streamed back into the venue for audiences to watch on a screen. While the production has no shortage of packed houses and continues to attract attention from across the city, it has also sparked debate about whether this creative choice is innovative or simply disappointing. Some feel shortchanged, as though they aren't receiving the full live experience they paid for, while others argue that the staging is daring and fresh, giving the show a unique identity. Actress Claw Sweeney, who attended a recent performance and shared her views on Good Morning Britain, expressed her admiration for the concept, calling it one of the most memorable aspects of the evening. Yet, despite praise from some, a wave of criticism continues to swirl online, showing how even groundbreaking artistic risks can divide an audience right down the middle. This conversation around the theater is just one piece of a larger and more complicated story: the dramatic turn in Rachel Zegler's career trajectory. Not long ago, she was universally celebrated as Hollywood's next great star, the type of actress studios were eager to attach to major projects. After her breakout performance in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, she was catapulted into global recognition, with critics falling over themselves to praise her raw talent, presence, and vocal ability. For a while, it seemed she had all the makings of a modern-day leading lady: youth, charisma, and the ability to draw audiences to theaters. Industry insiders openly speculated that she would become a central figure in the next decade of Hollywood storytelling, headlining blockbusters, awards darlings, and everything in between. Her name quickly became synonymous with the idea of the future of film. But the fairy tale rise began to falter with Disney's live-action Snow White remake, a project that should have been a triumph, but instead became the epicenter of controversy. From the very beginning, the casting announcement stirred conversation. Some fans applauded the decision as a bold and modern reimagining of the character, while others lamented that it strayed too far from the traditional image of the beloved animated princess. Yet it wasn't simply the casting that fueled backlash. It was Zegler's own words during press tours that truly ignited the firestorm. In a string of interviews, she spoke candidly about her distaste for elements of the original story, dismissing the classic love story and going as far as to describe the prince as a stalker. She also leaned heavily into framing her Snow White as a new kind of heroine, one uninterested in romance or traditional fairy tale tropes. On paper, these comments may have been meant to appeal to modern sensibilities, framing the remake as empowering and progressive. However, the delivery came across as harsh and dismissive, and to generations of fans who grew up treasuring the original Snow White, her remarks felt like a personal insult. Instead of generating excitement for the remake, Zegler's interviews became viral for all the wrong reasons, with clips circulating endlessly across TikTok, X, and YouTube. Audiences accused her of disrespecting a cornerstone of Disney's history, and many framed her comments as arrogance rather than confidence. Social media backlash snowballed rapidly, and what should have been her defining role transformed into a PR nightmare. The fallout was swift and sharp. Critics of Zegler accused her of biting the hand that fed her, alienating the very fan base that Disney depends on to make a project succeed. The controversy turned into a cultural flashpoint, with debates raging not just about her performance, but also about larger issues like the modernization of classic stories, respect for nostalgia, and the dangers of alienating core audiences. Studios, once eager to attach her name to major productions, reportedly began to rethink whether she was worth the risk. What was once framed as a meteoric rise suddenly became a cautionary tale about how quickly public favor can shift in the entertainment industry. Industry analysts were quick to point out that Rachel Zegler's controversial comments about Snow White didn't simply ruffle a few feathers. They had a measurable impact on the movie's ability to connect with audiences. The entertainment industry is built on nostalgia, and Disney, perhaps more than any other studio, has mastered the art of reselling childhood memories to new generations. When Zegler dismissed the original love story and branded the prince as a stalker, she wasn't just voicing an opinion, she was striking at the very core of what many fans cherished most about the film. For casual viewers, it came off as dismissive. For longtime Disney devotees, it felt like an insult. What might have been intended as a modern, empowering stance quickly spiraled into a cultural flashpoint, one that social media eagerly magnified. Almost overnight, Zegler's public persona shifted from Hollywood's rising golden girl to arrogant, ungrateful starlet. The internet wasted no time piling on. Twitter threads, YouTube breakdowns, and TikTok memes dissected every word of her interviews. Clips spread like wildfire, captioned with mocking text and sarcastic commentary. In the blink of an eye, she became a symbol of everything fans claimed was wrong with Hollywood: out-of-touch stars, tone-deaf PR strategies, and a disregard for audience sentiment. This wasn't just light criticism. It was a coordinated wave of online scorn that turned Rachel Zegler into a household name for all the wrong reasons. Instead of being framed as a bold voice willing to challenge outdated norms, she was cast as the antagonist in a narrative that valued nostalgia above all else. Once those labels, arrogant, dismissive, ungrateful, stuck, they became nearly impossible to shake off. And while this was happening in the world of film, her theater work in London became an almost ironic reflection of her career. The latest revival leaned heavily into experimental choices, particularly with its bold staging of the show's biggest number. The production had Zegler step outside the London Palladium to perform a climactic song, with the performance streamed back into the theater for the audience to watch. Some saw it as an innovative theatrical flourish that blended live performance with cinematic spectacle. Others, however, felt cheated. Viewers complained on X that they had paid top-tier ticket prices only to have the most anticipated number unfold outside the venue, effectively turning the live performance into a glorified live stream. This choice divided audiences in the same way Zegler herself was dividing public opinion, a mix of admiration for the daring creativity and disappointment from those who felt shortchanged. It mirrored her larger career in miniature. Bold experimentation met with backlash, applause mixed with outrage. But the real storm was unfolding with Snow White. What began as online outrage over a handful of interview clips ballooned into a narrative that Zegler herself had sabotaged the movie before it even hit theaters. The stakes were monumental. Disney had poured over $200 million into production and an additional $100 million into marketing. With such a staggering investment, the studio needed the film to perform on the level of the Lion King remake or Beauty and the Beast. Instead, opening weekend numbers in the United States were abysmal, scraping by with just $43 million, far below projections, and nowhere near enough to inspire confidence. By week 2, the box office collapsed by a devastating 66%. Disney, known for dominating theater slots, quietly pulled the film from prime showings to limit further embarrassment. Globally, the picture didn't improve. In China, a market that had once been Disney's financial lifeline, the film couldn't even cross the $1 million threshold. When the final calculations were made, the studio was staring at a loss of roughly $150 million.
And it just feels really real now that I made something and people are going to see it, and it's something that I'm really, really proud of.
For Disney, this wasn't just another box office flop, it was an identity crisis. The studio had banked on the live-action remake formula for over a decade, raking in billions by repackaging their animated classics. But with Snow White, that formula failed spectacularly, and many industry insiders were quick to place the blame squarely on Zegler. Her comments about the original film were seen as gasoline poured onto a fire, fueling a backlash that Disney could neither contain nor spin. It didn't help that the movie itself made controversial creative decisions, such as replacing the Seven Dwarfs with CGI creations following actor Peter Dinklage's critique of the original portrayal. Instead of winning praise for inclusivity, the move backfired, alienating both traditional fans and casual audiences who found the new characters visually unappealing. The combination of Zegler's polarizing remarks and the film's awkward compromises created the perfect storm of bad press. And the financial fallout wasn't the end of it. Public opinion toward Zegler began to harden. Casting directors and studio executives, once eager to sign her to major projects, now saw her as a risky investment. The narrative around her shifted from Hollywood's future to Hollywood's cautionary tale. Analysts argued that her public persona, outspoken, brash, and unapologetic, could have been an asset if handled carefully, but instead it was allowed to spiral unchecked. In an industry where likability often matters as much as talent, she found herself on the losing side of that balance. Fans who had once cheered her rise now shared clips mocking her downfall, and industry professionals whispered about whether she had become a liability. The tragedy of it all is how quickly the tide turned. Rachel Zegler's career was supposed to be a fairy tale, a young woman plucked from obscurity, given the lead in a Spielberg film, and launched into international stardom. But just a few years later, she was at the center of one of Disney's most expensive disasters. The story of Snow White was meant to be about reinvention, empowerment, and timeless magic. Instead, it became a case study in how modern Hollywood can misread its audience and how a single star's missteps can sink a project that cost hundreds of millions. In the end, Snow White didn't just flop. It collapsed under the weight of its own ambitions, leaving Disney with staggering financial losses and Rachel Zegler with a career scar that may take years to heal. It's a stark reminder of how fragile celebrity can be. One moment, an actor is being hailed as the next big thing. The next, they're the face of one of the industry's most infamous failures. For Disney, the film will be remembered as a cautionary tale about tampering with nostalgia. For Zegler, it may be remembered as the turning point where her fairy tale rise turned into something far closer to a nightmare. What was originally pitched as a bold and progressive reimagining quickly backfired in spectacular fashion. The decision to replace the Seven Dwarfs with CGI creations, meant to sidestep criticism about outdated portrayals, only sparked fresh outrage. Some actors with dwarfism spoke out directly, arguing that Disney's choice erased opportunities for performers who could have brought authenticity to the roles. One pointedly remarked, "Peter's rich, we're not," referencing Peter Dinklage's critique of the original story and highlighting how the studio seemed more interested in avoiding controversy than in supporting underrepresented talent. Instead of being hailed as progressive, the move came across as tone-deaf and performative. For audiences already skeptical about the project, it became yet another strike against the film, reinforcing the narrative that Disney had mishandled both the story and the casting. The fallout from these missteps was devastating. Rachel Zegler, once considered one of the most promising young actresses in Hollywood, found herself slapped with one of the industry's harshest labels: box office poison. The term, which has historically marked the downturn of several once beloved stars, carries a chilling implication that attaching her name to a project might actively hurt its commercial chances. Rumors began swirling that studios were quietly pulling back, wary of betting hundreds of millions on a performer now associated with one of Disney's most embarrassing flops. Even Disney itself, which once positioned Zegler as the centerpiece of its live-action strategy, appears reluctant to give her another leading role. For an actress who seemed destined to become a household name, the silence from Hollywood has been deafening. This is not just a story of one film underperforming. It's a brutal reminder of how quickly the entertainment industry can turn on someone who falls out of favor with the public. Hollywood thrives on image, and when that image is tarnished, the damage spreads fast. Fans, too, play a critical role in this cycle. Once they perceive arrogance or tone-deaf behavior, their patience evaporates, and social media accelerates the backlash into a full-blown storm. Zegler's transformation from rising star to cautionary tale happened almost in real time, unfolding across interviews, memes, and box office numbers. Instead of being seen as an empowered, trailblazing voice, she became a lightning rod for criticism, a symbol of Hollywood hubris and miscalculation. The real question now isn't whether her career has been damaged. That much is undeniable. The question is whether it can ever be repaired. Can Rachel Zegler bounce back from being branded as a PR disaster? Or has her Hollywood fairy tale already reached its unhappy ending? The industry has seen stars stumble before and recover, but few face such a public and costly collapse so early in their careers. For now, it seems she is caught between reinvention and retreat, searching for a way to regain credibility in an environment that rarely forgives and almost never forgets. One thing is certain, Disney, having sunk hundreds of millions into Snow White, surely wishes it could hit rewind. And as for Zegler, the hard truth may be that not even Prince Charming could rescue this story from its tragic twist.